You are different now. Not in the way people mean when they say growth. Different in ways you didn't choose. Different in ways that show up every single day. And most of the time, you don't even connect them to what happened. You check someone's tone before you respond to a simple text. You apologize before you've even said anything wrong. You wait for things to fall apart even when they won't. That's not anxiety. That's not personality. That's damage. And in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to name exactly what was damaged. 5 specific things, so that you can finally stop calling it something wrong with you and start calling it what it actually is. Something that was done to you. 5 things. No vague concepts. No theory. Just the exact parts of you that changed and why they changed. Thing 1. Your ability to trust your own judgment. Before that relationship, when something felt wrong, you acted on it. Not perfectly. Not always correctly. But you trusted the signal. Now you don't. Now when something feels off, your first move is not to address it. Your first move is to question whether you're reading it right. You wonder if you're being too sensitive. You wonder if you're seeing something that isn't there. You wonder if you're the problem. That is not who you were before. Here is what happened. Every time you trusted your instincts in that relationship, every time you said something doesn't feel right, you were told you were wrong. Not once, not twice, consistently. Every single time you said, "This hurt me." They said, "You're overreacting." You said, "I remember that differently." They said, "That's not what happened." You said, "Something feels off." They said, "You're being paranoid." Over and over, until your own judgment started to feel like the unreliable thing in the room. The damage is this. You learned that your perception could not be trusted, and that lesson didn't leave when they did. It stayed. You are still running everything through a filter that asks, "Am I wrong about this?" Before you act on what you feel, before you say what you notice, before you trust what you see, you check it, you second guess it, you wait for permission to believe your own experience. That is the first thing they took. Thing 2, your relationship with silence. Before that relationship, silence was neutral. A quiet room was just a quiet room. A message that hadn't been answered yet was just a message. Someone not texting back immediately was just a person with their own life. Now silence has a weight. When someone goes quiet, when a conversation ends abruptly, when a room gets still, your body responds before your mind does. Your chest tightens. You scan the last thing you said for what went wrong. You start composing the apology before you know what you're apologizing for. You are not anxious. You were trained. In that relationship, silence was a weapon. It was used to punish. It was used to control. It was used to make you desperate enough to come back and take the blame for something you didn't do, just to make the silence stop. You experienced that pattern enough times that your nervous system learned what silence means. Silence means danger. Silence means you did something wrong. Silence means you need to fix it now. That association didn't come with you naturally. It was installed, and now it runs automatically. In new relationships, in friendships, in professional situations. Every time someone goes quiet, the old alarm goes off. Not because you're broken, because you were taught. Thing 3, your nervous system's baseline. Before that relationship, you could relax. Not completely, no one can. But you had a baseline. A resting state, a version of you that was not on alert. That version is harder to find now. You are more tired than you should be. Not physically though, sometimes that too. But tired in the way that comes from constant low-level vigilance, watching for shifts in mood, reading the room before you speak, tracking the emotional temperature of every space you're in before you decide how to behave in it. You do this automatically. You probably don't even notice you're doing it. That is hypervigilance, and it is one of the most exhausting things a person can live with, because it never stops. Even in safe situations, your nervous system keeps scanning, even with people who have never given you reason to be afraid. Your body acts like the threat is still there, because for a long time, it was. You were in an environment where reading someone's mood correctly was not optional. It was survival. You got very good at it. And that skill, that constant scanning, does not turn off just because the danger is gone. Your nervous system doesn't know the relationship ended. It only knows that the last time it lowered its guard, something bad happened. So it stays up. Thing 4. Your tolerance threshold. Before that relationship, certain things were unacceptable to you. You knew the line. You could feel it when something crossed it, and you responded accordingly. That line moved. Not all at once. Gradually. So gradually that you didn't feel it moving. The first time they said something that crossed it, you reacted. You said something. You held the line. The second time, you were a little less certain. Maybe you had misread it. Maybe it wasn't as bad as you thought. The fifth time, you didn't react at all, because by then, it had become normal. That is how the threshold works. Every time you accepted something that should have been unacceptable, even when you accepted it because you had no other option, even when you accepted it to survive, your nervous system updated its definition of normal. And that updated definition came with you. Now you tolerate things from other people. That would have been immediate deal breakers before. You make excuses for behavior you shouldn't excuse. You minimize things that deserve to be taken seriously. You give second, third, fourth chances to people who have shown you exactly who they are. Not because you don't know better, because your sense of what is acceptable was recalibrated inside a relationship where the unacceptable was the everyday. Thing 5, your ability to receive love without suspecting it. This is the one that does the most damage to what comes after. When someone is genuinely kind to you now, when someone shows up consistently, when someone says something warm without an agenda, when someone treats you well without needing anything in return, you don't fully receive it. Part of you waits for the shift, waits for the moment when the kindness becomes a debt, waits for the version of them that you're convinced is coming. Because that's what happened before. The warmth at the beginning was never just warmth. It was the setup. So now warmth feels like a setup, even when it isn't, even when the person in front of you is exactly who they appear to be, even when there is no hidden version coming. You can't fully land in the safety they're offering, because your body has learned that safety is temporary, and the cost of believing in it is too high. This is not trust issues. This is a learned response to a real experience. You trusted completely, and that complete trust was used against you. Of course you're careful now. Of course you hold something back. Of course, part of you keeps watching. The problem is not that you learn to protect yourself. The problem is that the protection is now running in situations where it isn't needed and keeping you from things that are actually safe. 5 things. Your judgment, your relationship with silence, your nervous system's baseline, your tolerance threshold, your ability to receive love. None of them are character flaws. None of them are proof that something is fundamentally wrong with you. Every single one of them is a logical response to an environment that required them. You adapted. That is what humans do. The adaptation made sense then. The adaptation is creating problems now. And the only way through is not to criticize yourself for having adapted, but to understand specifically what changed and why, so that you can begin, slowly, to update the responses that no longer match your actual situation. That starts with naming them. You just named all 5. Which one of these 5 hit closest? Drop the number in the comments. Not the story, just the number. Judgment, silence, nervous system, tolerance, receiving love. Because the moment you name it, it stops running you without your knowledge. Subscribe to the mirror effect. The clearer you see, the freer you become.